In this video, we will take a deep dive into the movie Final Destination 5. We will discuss the film story, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie production detail and box office performance. Finally, we will share reviews and our personal reactions. So, let's get started. When we begin talking about horror film that left a strong impression on audience, the Final Destination almost always into the conservation. Over the year, this franchise has created a very unique identity in the horror genre. Instead of focusing on a traditional villain like a monster, ghost, or serial killer, these films explore something more unsettling: the idea that death itself is the unstoppable antagonist. That concept alone makes the Final Destination 5 an interesting film to discuss, especially when examining how series evolve and how this particular installment try to refresh the formula. Released in 2011 and directed by Steven Quale, Final Destination 5 arrives as the fifth chapter in a long-running horror franchise. By the time a series reaches its fifth entry, audience often expect repetition. Many horror sequels struggle because they simply repeat the same story structure without adding anything new. However, this film is worth discussing because it attempts to refine the elements that make the earlier movies successful while also include a few new twists to keep viewers engaged. One of the most fascinating aspects of this movie is its genre identity. At its core, Final Destination 5 is a supernatural horror thriller, but it also contains a strong element of suspense and disaster filmmaking. Unlike many horror movies where the more threat appears suddenly, these films slowly build tension through careful design situation. The audience knows that something terrible is about to happen, but the exact moment and method remain uncertain. This creates a type of psychological suspense that keeps viewers constantly alert, scanning every scene for clues about what might go wrong. The opening disaster sequence is a perfect example of why the film deserves attention. The bridge collapse scene is large in scale, dramatic in presentation, and incredibly detailed in its setup. Instead of simply showing chaos, the sequence carefully built a chain reaction of even small detail that gradually lead to a massive catastrophe. This style of storytelling is very much part of the franchise identity. It's not just about sudden shock, it's about watching the domino effect of fate unfolding step by step. Director Steven Quale play a very important role in shaping this experience. Before directing this film, he worked closely with legendary filmmaker James Cameron as a second unit director on large production. That background is visible in the way Final Destination 5 handled its action and visual effect. The disaster scenes feel cinematic and carefully choreographed rather than chaotic. Cool blindness is spectral with suspense, allowing the audience to clearly follow what is happening while still maintaining a sense of panic and danger. Another reason this movie is interesting to discuss is its production style. The film combines practical effect, digital effect, and carefully staged physical performance to create its elaborate death scene. Each scene is constructed almost like a puzzle. Objects are placed in specific position. Camera angle focus on small detail and background element quietly hint at which might happen next. This method of storytelling encourages viewer to actively participate in the experience, predicting possible outcome and anticipating the inevitable moment when everything goes wrong. Visually, the movie maintains a clean and polished look while still embracing the dark tone typical of horror films. The cinematography highlight everyday environment, offices, factories, gyms, and transform them into potential death traps. This approach reinforces one of the franchise core idea. Danger can exist in ordinary places, the audience being to look at simple object differently, realizing that anything could become the part of the death design. Perhaps what makes Final Destination 5 worth discussing is how it reflects the strength of the entire franchise. The film understands that the real appeal of these movies is not just the shocking moment, but the creative build up leading to those moments, suspense, anticipation, and the feeling that fate can't be escaped, all combined to create a unique horror experience. So, before diving deeper into the story, character, and theme, it is helpful to recognize why this film matter within the genre. Final Destination 5 represent a continuation of a concept that has fascinated audience for years. The terrifying idea that sometimes the greatest horror is not a creature or a villain but the inevitable design of the fate itself. The production budget of the Final Destination 5 provide an interesting case study in how mid-range Hollywood horror film manage resources to deliver large-scale spectacle while maintaining financial efficiency. Produced as the fifth installment in the running Financial Destination, the film had an estimated production budget of approximately $40 million. This budget placed it in the middle range for studio horror production, large enough to support complex visual effect and major disaster sequence, but still control enough to ensure profitability within the genre traditional financial model. One of the defining characteristics of the franchise has always been its ability to create memorable and elaborate that sequence without requiring the massive budget seen in action blockbuster. In the case of Final Destination, the production team allocated a significant portion of the budget toward the film's opening disaster sequence, the dramatic suspension bridge collapse. This scene functioned as the narrative catalyst for the entire story and had to be visually convincing in order to establish the film's tone and stakes. Creating this sequence required a combination of computer generated imagery, practical effects, and detailed stunt coordination. Large scale destruction scenes are expensive because they involve multiple layers of production work, digital modeling, physics simulation, stunt safety planning, and extensive post production editing. For this reason, a notable percentage of the film's $40 million budget was devoted to visual effect and technical department responsible for crafting the bridge collapse and the intricate accident sequence that follow throughout the story. Another major area of the resource allocation involved the film 3D production format. During the early 2010, many studios experimented with 3D filmmaking following the global success of films like Avatar, directed by James Cameron. The film was designed to take the advantage of this trend by incorporating visuals that could enhance the 3D viewing experience, particularly during moments of suspense and action. Shooting and finishing a film for 3D presentation required additional camera technology, specialized visual effect adjustment, and more complex post-production workflow. These requirements likely increase the film's technical cost compared to earlier installment in the series. Casting choices also reflect the film's balanced budget strategy. Instead of hiring high-cost A-list star, the production focused on emerging actors and recognizable genre performers such as Nicolas D'Agosto and Emma Bell. This approach allowed the studio to allocate more financial resources toward production design and visual spectacle rather than actors' salaries. At the same time, the inclusion of the franchise veteran Todd helped maintain continuity with earlier entries in the series, providing a familiar presence for long-time fans without significantly increasing the film's payroll costs. From a production design perspective, the film also focused on controlled environment rather than expensive international location. Many of the movie scenes take place in everyday settings such as offices, factories, gyms, and restaurants. These environments are less costly to construct or rent compared to the large outdoor sets or global shooting locations. However, the filmmaker compensated for this simplicity by designing detailed sequences in which ordinary objects gradually become the part of elaborate chain of accidents. When comparing the film $40 million budget to similar genre production, Final Destination 5 falls within a common range for studio back horror film of its time. For example, the earlier film had a reported budget of about $25 million, while the Final Destination, the fourth installment, was produced with roughly $40 million as well. This indicates that the studio aimed to maintain a consistent investment level for the franchise, ensuring visual improvement without dramatically increasing financial risk. Compare with large-scale action blockbuster which often succeed $150 million or even $200 million in production cost. Final Destination 5 represent a cost-efficient model of genre filmmaking. The horror genre historically performed well with moderate budgets because its success rely more on suspense, creative concept, and memorable set pieces rather than constant large-scale spectacle. Ultimately, the $40 million investment in the film reflect a carefully balanced production strategy. Resources were directed toward high impact moments, especially the opening disaster and integrate accident sequence, while cost saving measures in casting and location help keep the project financially sustainable. This approach allows the film to deliver visually engaging horror entertainment while remaining aligned with the economic realities of the franchise filmmaking. The genre identity of the film is rooted primarily in supernatural horror, but the film also blends elements of suspense, thrill, and disaster cinema. As the fifth installment in the long-running Final Destination, the movie continued the franchise's unique approach to horror storytelling, one that replaces a traditional villain with an invisible and unstoppable force. Death itself, this concept allows the film to build tension in a very different way compared to the typical horror movies that rely on monster or killers. One of the defining features of the film genre is its emphasis on anticipatory horror rather than focusing slowly on sudden shock or jump scare. The film carefully constructs sequences in which the audience can sense that something terrible is about to happen. Everyday objects such as tools, wires, liquid, or machinery are arranged in ways that create potential danger. The camera linger on these details, encourages viewer to mentally connect the pieces before the inevitable accident occurs. This technique transforms ordinary environment into suspenseful spaces filled with hidden threats. The atmosphere of the film is shaped heavily by its constant sense of inevitability. Once the characters survive the opening disaster, the audience understands that their escape is temporary. Death design continue to follow them, creating a mood of tension that persists throughout the entire story. Every scene carries a subtitle layer of anxiety because viewers know that even the most ordinary situation could suddenly turn deadly. The opening sequence, the large-scale bridge collapse, establishing this tone immediately. Directed by Steven Quale, the scene is both dramatic and chaotic, functioning as a disaster film moment within a horror narrative. This sequence is important because it creates a dramatic contrast between large-scale disaster and a smaller, more personal death sequence that follow later in the story. The shift from massive disaster to intimate accidents given the film a rhythm that balances spectacle with suspense. In terms of pacing, Final Destination 5 follow a structure and deliberate progression. After the opening catastrophe, the film slowed down to focus on character interaction and the unfolding mystery of death design. During these quieter moments, the audience observe how the survivor process their trauma and attempt to understand why the accident continued to happen. This slower section allows tension to build gradually before each new and death sequence interrupt the calm with sudden intensity. This pattern of calm followed by chaos is central to the film pacing strategy. The audience is just given enough time to relax before the next carefully designed chain of event begin. Because viewers know that death will strike again, the suspense comes not from if something will happen but how it will happen. Stylistically, the film uses visual storytelling technique that emphasize detail and cause and effect relationship. Close-up shoot often highlights small subjects that might seem harmless at first. A loose screw, a sharp edge, or a drop of liquid can quietly become the first step in a complicated series of events. This method turns each scene into a suspenseful puzzle, inviting the audience to anticipate possible outcome. The cinematography also contributes to the movie's mood by presenting everyday environments, offices, factories, gyms, and public spaces as potential trap. These locations are familiar and realistic, which make the danger feel more immediate. The idea that ordinary places can suddenly become deadly reinforces a film's central theme that death design operate everywhere. Another element shaping the mood is the film's overall tone. While it maintains a dark and ominous atmosphere, it occasionally incorporates moments of dark humor and irony. Some death sequences contain unexpected twists that highlight the unpredictability of fate. These moments do not reduce the horror but instead add an unsettling layer of unpredictability. The presence of mysterious Morty cannons portrayed by Tony Todd further enhanced the film's tone. His calm philosophical dialogue introduces a sense of era wisdom about death rule, reinforces the supernatural aspect of the story. His character act almost like a symbolic messenger, reminding the survivor and the audience that escaping fate may be impossible. Overall, the genre and the mood of the Final Destination combine suspense, supernatural horror, and dramatic tension to create a unique cinematic experience. Through deliberate pacing, detailed visual storytelling, and an atmosphere of inevitable danger, the film maintains a persistent sense of unease that keep the viewer engaged from beginning to end. Before watching the film, many audiences already have a clear idea of what kind of experience they expect. This expectation largely come from the reputation of the Final Destination franchise, which has built a distinctive place within the horror genre over the year. By the time the fifth installment was released in 2011, viewers were already familiar with the series' central concept. A group of people narrowly escape a catastrophic accident after someone has a frightening premonition, only to realize later that death still intends to claim them in a predetermined order. Because of this recognizable formula, audience typically approach the film with a mixture of excitement, curiosity, and sometimes skepticism. One of the main group drawn to the films consists of teenager and young adult who enjoy intense horror thriller. The Final Destination film have always appealed to viewers who appreciate suspense, shocking moment, and elaborate accident sequence rather than slow psychological horror. Younger audience often expect the film to deliver a fast-paced experience filled with tension and unpredictable situation. They usually anticipate dramatic scenes that keep them on edge and create a sense of constant danger for the character. Another important group include long-time fans of the series. Many viewers have followed the franchise since the first film was released more than a decade earlier. For these returning fans, watching the fifth installment carries a sense of continuity and nostalgia. They often come into the film hoping to see familiar storytelling patterns that make the earlier entries memorable. These viewers expect the same core element that define the franchise. The initial disaster we and the survivor try to understand what is happening and a gradual series of accidents that seem guided by an invisible design. At the same time, audience who have seen previous film also expect certain improvement by the fifth installment. Viewers usually hope the filmmaker will introduce new ideas or creative variation within the established formula. Fans often anticipate more complex sequence, stronger visual effect, and surprising twists that prevent the story from feeling repetitive. This combination of familiarity and innovation becomes an important part of their expectation before watching the movie. The themes that audience anticipate also play a major role in shaping their mindset. Many viewers expect the story to explore ideas about fate, destiny, and the consequence of interfering within the natural order. The series has always suggested that death follows a specific plan. Anyone who escapes it will eventually faces the consequence. Because of this concept, audience often approach the film with a sense of philosophical curiosity. They are interested not only in the suspenseful event but also in the larger question of whether fate can ever truly be avoided. Another expectation relate to the transformation of ordinary situation into moment of danger. And of the franchise known that the film often turn everyday film environment into potential death traps. Simple subject or common activities can suddenly become the part of a complicated chain reaction that lead to disaster. Before even watching the movie, viewers often anticipate scene in which small detail gradually build tension until something unexpected happen. genre fan also tend to expect a specific style of suspense. Unlike many horror films that focus on a visible villain or supernatural creature, this story presents death itself as an unseen antagonist. This approach creates a different type of tension. Instead of waiting for a monster or killer to appear, the audience watches a scene carefully, searching for clues about how event might unfold. The suspense comes from observing the environment and wondering how ordinary object might combine in dangerous way. The pacing of the film is another element audience often anticipate. Many viewers expect a structure that alternates between quieter moment of character interaction and sudden burst of intense action. The opening disaster scene, which has become a significant element of the franchise, is usually something fans look forward to even before the movie being. These large scale sequences set the tone for the story and create excitement early in the viewing experience. Despite these expectations, some viewers also approach the film with a degree of skepticism. When a franchise reaches fifth installment, audience sometimes worry that the concept may have been repeated too many times. They may wonder whether the filmmaker will be able to keep the story fresh or whether the movie will simply repeat the same pattern from earlier entries. This uncertainty creates an interesting balance between doubt and curiosity, in that most audience enter the film expecting a suspenseful and entering the horror experience rather than a deeply complex narrative. They anticipate creative accident sequence, rising tension, and storyline that explore the idea that escaping fate might only delay the inevitable. These expectations show how viewers experience the movie, influencing their reaction to the suspense, the character, and the overall atmosphere of the story. The movie is designed for a very specific type of audience, particularly viewers who enjoy suspense-driven horror film with intense and unpredictable scenarios. As part of a well-known horror franchise, the film clearly targets audiences who are already familiar with the style and storytelling approach of the series. The viewers are typically drawn to the movie that combine thrilling situations, shocking accident, and a constant sense of danger rather than focusing on a deep emotional drama or slow psychological horror. The film is created primarily for people who want an exciting and tense cinematic experience. One of the most obvious audience group for the film is young adult and older teenager. Most viewers who are interested in this type of horror movie generally fall within the age range of around 60 to 35-year-old. This age group often enjoy high energy entertainment that includes suspense, surprising twists, and visually dramatic scenes. The movie pacing and the style are well suited for viewers who prefer films that keep them engaged through continuous tension and predictable events. Younger audience in particular often appreciate the adrenaline-driven storytelling that the Final Destination series is known for. The film is also targeted at viewers who enjoy thriller and that involves survival situation. The central concept of the story revolves around a group of people who escape a deadly accident but soon realize that their survival may only be temporary. This premise naturally appeal to the audience who like story about fate, danger, and the struggle to avoid disaster. Viewers who are fascinated by the idea of how small event can lead to major consequences may find the film especially interesting. Much of the suspense in the movie comes from watching how everyday object and situation gradually turn into dangerous chain of events. Another important part of the target audience include fans for the broader horror genre. Horror fans often enjoy films that create strong emotional reactions such as fear, tension, and anticipation. In this case, the movie focuses less on supernatural creature and more on the concept of death itself, acting as an invisible force. This unique approach tends to attract viewers who appreciate creative storytelling within the horror genre. Many horror fans enjoy analyzing the way suspense is built through careful visual clues and gradual build-up, which is a defining feature of the film style. People who enjoy disaster movie may also find themselves drawn to the film. The story begins with a large catastrophic event that set the entire plot in motion. Viewers who like dramatic scenes involving collapsing structures, chaotic environment, and large group survival situation often find this type of opening sequence very engaging. After the initial disaster, the film shifts towards smaller but equally intense moment of danger, which continue to maintain the same level of suspense. This combination of large-scale spectacle and personal survival stories happen broaden the film appeal. Another group that the movie aimed to reach is long-time follower of the franchise. Many viewers have watched earlier entries in the series and are curious to see how the concept continue to evolve. These returning fans already understand the basic formula of the story, so that they often watch the film expecting to see new variation on the familiar structure. The filmmakers seem aware of this audience and attempt to deliver creative scenarios that still feel connected to the original idea of the series. The movie may also appeal to viewers who enjoy solving puzzles or predicting outcome in story. The suspenseful sequence often involve multiple objects and action that slowly build toward an extent. As these details are revealed, audience frequently try to anticipate what might happen next. This interactive aspect of the viewing experience makes the film particularly engaging for people who enjoy paying close attention to visual clues and cause and effect relationship. However, the film is not necessarily designed for everyone. People who prefer slower, character-driven dramas or light-hearted entertainment may not find the movie appealing. The tone is often tense and sometimes disturbing, and the focus on dangerous accident may be uncomfortable for viewers who are sensitive to graphic or suspenseful scenes. Younger children are also not the part of the intended audience because the film's content and the themes are aimed at a more mature group of viewers. Overall, the movie is primarily created for young adult audience and horror enthusiasts who enjoy suspenseful storytelling, dramatic accident sequence, and the story about fate and survival. Viewers who appreciate fast-paced thriller and creative visual tension are likely to be the ones who connect most strongly with the film. The combination of suspense, spectacle, and the constant question of whether fate can truly be escaped make it particularly appealing to fans of intense and unpredictable cinematic experience. The movie Final Destination 5 promises an emotional experience that is built primarily around tension, anxiety, and the constant feeling of uncertainty. From the beginning of the story, the film establishes a mood that is uneasy and suspenseful. Instead of relying only on sudden scars, the movie focuses on creating a psychological atmosphere where the audience always feels that something terrible could happen at any moment. This lingering sense of danger becomes the emotional foundation of the viewing experience. One of the strongest emotional elements the film delivers is anticipation. The story introduces the idea that a group of people narrowly escape a catastrophic accident, but their survival may only be temporary because death still intend to claim them. This concept immediately creates a powerful emotional hook for viewer. The audience understands that the characters are living on borrowed time, which make every situation feel more intense. Even simple activities such as walking through a workplace, using machinery, or performing routine tasks being to feel threatening. The mood of the film is therefore dominated by suspense and uneasy rather than presenting danger in obvious way. The movie often builds tension slowly through visual clues and environmental detail. Everyday objects are shown in way that suggest they might become party of a deadly chain of events. As viewers watch these scenes unfold, they begin to anticipate how each small detail might contribute to a larger accident. This careful build-up creates a unique emotional response because the audience is not just reacting to what happened but actively predicting what might happen next. Another emotional layer of the movie involves the theme of inevitability. The story suggests that fate has a specific plan and that escaping it may be impossible. The idea can create a feeling of hopelessness for both the character and the audience. Viewers watch as the survivor attempt to understand what is happening and try to find way to avoid their predicted fate. This struggle introduces an important tension that goes beyond simple fear. It becomes a question of whether human effort can truly overcome destiny. This theme often leads to the moment of paranoia and anxiety within the narrative. The character being to see potential danger everywhere around them. Objects that once seem harmless suddenly appear threatening. The shift in perspective is something the audience experience alongside the character. As the film progresses, viewers may find themselves examining every detail on screen, wondering whether a small object or action will trigger the next disaster. The movie intentionally encourages this mindset, turning the act of watching into an interactive emotional experience. In addition to tension and anxiety, the film also delivers moments of shock and surprise. Many of the accidents occur in ways that are unexpected, even when the audience believes they have predicted that outcome. These sudden moments create strong emotional reaction because they interrupt the slow build-up of suspense. The contrast between quiet anticipation and sudden chaos keep viewers emotionally engaged throughout the story. Another emotional aspect of the movie comes from the relationship between the characters. After surviving the initial disaster, the group members share a bond formed through trauma. However, as they begin to realize that their lives are still in danger, fear, and desperation being to influence their decisions, some characters remain hopeful and try to support one another, while others become increasingly focused on saving themselves. These reactions create emotional tension within the group and allow the audience to see different way people respond to fear. The film also touches on theme of polarity and fragility of life by showing how quickly ordinary situation can turn into deadly accident. The story reminds viewer that life can be unpredictable. This idea can create a deeper emotional impact because it reflects a real world fear that many people share. The thought that fate might be guided by unseen forces make the event of the movie feel unsettling in a philosophical way. At times, the movie introduces small moments of dark humor or irony. These moments appear when even unfold in ways that are strongly unexpected or exaggerated instead of reducing the horror. These touches of dark humor or irony, these moments appear when events unfold in ways that are strangely unexpected or exaggerated. Instead of reducing the harm, these touches of dark humor often intensify the emotional experience by making the unpredictability of fan feel even more unsettling. Ultimately, the emotional experience promised by the film revolve around a continuous cycle of tension, anticipation, shock, and reflection. The audience is meant to feel both nervous and fascinating as the story unfolds. By combining such a suspenseful storytelling with theme about fate and survival, the movie aimed to leave viewers thinking not only about the event of the story but also about the unpredictable nature of life itself. The core idea behind Final Destination 5 revolve around the concept of fate and the fragile illusion of control that human beings believe that they possesses over their life. At its most abstract level, the story explores the tension between destiny and free will. It suggests that life follows a certain order and invisible pattern that may exist beyond human understanding. When that pattern is disrupted, consequences being to unfold in ways that feel both mysterious and inevitable. At the center of the film story concept is the idea that survival does not always mean escape. The narrative being with a moment where individuals avoid a catastrophic event, creating the impression that they have overcome danger. Yet the deeper message of the story question whether such victories are genuine. The film possesses that escaping an immediate disaster may simply delay an outcome that was already predetermined. In this sense, the story challenges the comforting belief that humans can fully shape their own destiny. One of the most important themes explored in the film is the relationship between chance and design. Throughout life, people often interrupt events as random coincidence. However, the movie concept suggests that what appear random might actually be the part of a larger structure that remain hidden from human perspective. Small details and object placed in a certain position, a slight shift in timing, or an unexpected interruption can trigger a chain of events with fear reaching consequences. The story highlight how fragile the balance of everyday life can be, emphasizing the idea that even the smallest action can lead to dramatic outcome. Analyzing central theme within the story is the psychological impact of knowing that one's future may be limited. When characters realize that their survival might be temporary, they are focused to confront the reality of mortality in a direct and immediate way. This awareness changes how they see the world around them. Ordinary environment being to feel unpredictable and dangerous, and familiar objects suddenly carry the possibility of harm. Through this transformation in perspective, the film examines how fear can reshape a person's understanding of safety and normalcy. The concept of inevitability also plays a significant role in the story's deeper message. The narrative repeatedly raises the question of whether destiny can truly be avoided. Even when individuals attempt to intervene or change their circumstances, the result often seems to circle back toward the same outcome. This recurring pattern suggests that life may operate according to rules that can't easily be broken. The character attempt to out maneuver fate becomes a metaphor for the human struggle to find meaning and control in a world that often feel unpredictable. At the same time, the story explores the moral and emotional consequence of trying to escape fate when people believe their lives are threatened by focusing beyond their control. They may begin to make decisions driven by desperation. Fear can influence behaviors, altering how individuals relate to one another. Trust may awaken, cooperation may collapse, and personal survival may become the dominant priority. Through these changes, the film reflects on how extreme circumstances can reveal different sides of human nature. Another important idea embedded in the story is the interconnectedness of events. The film presents reality as a network of causes and effects where each moment is linked to the next. A seemingly insignificant action may set off a chain reaction that spread through multiple layers of the environment. This perspective highlights how individual experiences are really isolated. Instead, every event exist within a larger web of relationship and consequence. The narrative uses this idea to create a sense that life itself a delicate system where stability can easily shift into chaos. The story also touches on the philosophical theme of polarity awareness. Human beings generally move through life without constantly thinking about the inevitability of death. Yet when the possibility becomes immediate and unavoidable, it forces a shift in perspective. The characters in the films are confronted with this reality, and their reactions reflect different way people respond to the knowledge of limited time. Some may search for solution, others may attempt to expect their situation, and some may struggle to maintain hope in the face of uncertainty. In a broader scene, the movie core idea can be seen as a reflection on the unpredictability of existence. Life often appears stable and organized, but unexpected event can disrupt that instability without warning. The narrative captures this uncertainty by showing how quickly circumstances can change. A routine moment can transform into a crisis, and a decision made in second can alter the course of an entire future. Ultimately, the story central message is not simply about fear or danger. Instead, it explores the deeper question of how people respond to the possibility and that their lives may follow a path that can't fully control. The tension between expecting fate and resisting it becomes the emotional and philosophical foundation of the narrative. Through this struggle, the film invites viewers to reflect on their own relationship with chance, destiny, and the fragile nature of life itself. The power of the story lies in how it transforms a simple premise into a broader meditation on human resistance. By framing life as a series of interconnected moments shaped by unseen forces, the film encourages audience to think about the balance between choice and circumstances. Whether fate is truly fixed or endlessly adaptable remain an open question, but the narrative suggests that the search for control itself part of what defines that human experience. The central conflict of the film revolves around a profound struggle between human survival instinct and the mysterious force that seems to govern the order of life and death. At its core, the story is built on tension created by the idea that the characters are caught within a system that can't fully understand or control. This conflict is not simply about physical danger but about a deeper psychological and moral battle that unfold as individuals confront the limit of their power over fate. One major element of this conflict is the clash between hope and inevitability. The character resist in a situation where they desperately want to believe that may change their future. Human nature encourages that belief that with enough effort, intelligence, or courage, problem can be solved and danger can be avoided. However, the circumstances surrounding them repeatedly challenge that belief. The tension raises from the constant question of whether determination and strategy can truly overcome forces that appear to be predetermined. This struggle creates an emotional environment filled with uncertainty. Every decision the character make carries the weight of potential consequence, yet there is no clear path towards safety. The lack of reliable rules or predictable outcome make the situation psychologically exhausting. The character must constantly evaluate their surrounding, their choices, and even their relationship with other. In doing so, they experience a level of pressure that forces them to reconsider when survival really means. Another central dimension of the conflict involves moral dilemma that raise when people believe their lives are threatened. When individuals are placed in extreme circumstances, their priorities can shift dramatically. Self-preservation become a powerful motivation, sometimes overriding values that might normally guide their action. This creates a difficult ethical question about how far someone should go to protect their own life. The tension between personal survival and moral responsibility become a critical part of the story's conflict. Character must consider whether saving themselves might come at a cost to the other. This situation challenges the boundaries of companion loyalty and trust. In ordinary circumstances, people often rely on social rule and moral standard to guide their behavior. However, when survival feels uncertain, those standards might begin to weaken, revealing that complexity of human decision making under pressure. The conflict is also shaped by the psychological impact of living under constant threat, knowing that danger may appear at any moment, create a persistent sense of anxiety. The emotional strain affect how characters think and interact with one another. Fear can distort perception, causing individuals to interpret in ordinary situation as potential threat. At this mindset develop, the world around them being to feel unstable and unpredictable. The psychological tension extend beyond fear of physical harm. It also involves the fear of unknown. The characters are confronted with a situation that does not follow familiar rule, which make it difficult to form clear strategies for survival without reliable information or clear explanation of what is happening. That must rely on speculation and instant. This uncertainty intensify the conflict because every attempt to solve the problem feel incomplete. Another aspect of the central conflict lies in the struggle to understand pattern within chaos. Human beings naturally seek meaning in the event around them. When faced with unpredictable danger, the character attempt to identify situation and interrupt the situation as part of the larger structure. This search for pattern become both a source of hope and frustration. On one hand, discovering a system might offer the possibility of escape. On the other hand, the more they learn, the more they may realize how limited their influence truly is. Relationship between characters also play a key role in shaping the story's tension. As the individual confront the possibility of losing control over their future, trust become fragile. Different people react to stress in different way, and their difference can lead to disagreement or conflict within the group. Some individuals may believe in cooperation and shared survival, while others may become more focused on protecting themselves at all costs. These contrasting responses create emotional friction that deepen the overall conflict. In addition to interpersonal struggle, the story presents a philosophical challenge about the nature of it. The structure must decide whether the situation represents an unavoidable destiny or whether it can still be changed through human action. This question lies at the heart of the narrative tension. If it is truly fixed, the resistance may be meaningless. If the fate can be altered, then every decision becomes critically important. This philosophical uncertainty placing the character in a state of continuous internal conflict. They must balance fear with determination, skepticism with hope, and instinct with morality. Each choice they make become the part of a larger struggle to define what survival means in a world where control appears to be slipping away. Ultimately, the central conflict of the story is not simply about escaping danger, it is about confronting the limit of human control in the face of forces that seem larger than individuals' will. The tension grows from the realization that survival may depend not only on physical tension but also on difficult ethical decision and psychological reliance. Through this clear conflict, the narrative explores how people respond when they believe their lives are governed by forces beyond their understanding. The struggle between fate and choice, fear and courage, self interest and morality becomes the driving force behind the story's tension. In doing so, the film presents a conflict that is both thrilling and deeply reflecting of human nature when faced with the unknown. The story of the film explores a number of interconnected themes that revolve around human vulnerability, moral responsibility, and the constant tension between fate and personal choice. At a deeper level, the film is less about the surface level danger faced by the character and more about how people react when confronted with faces that can't fully understand or control. Through this framework, the narrative raises ethical questions, traces emotional development among the character, and touches on broader culture ideas about life, destiny, and survival. One of the most prominent themes explored in the film is the concept of fate versus free will. Human beings often believe that they have control over their own lives and that their decisions shape their future. However, the story challenges this belief by suggesting that certain outcome may already be determined by a larger design. This idea creates a philosophical tension within the narrative. If destiny is fixed, then individual choices might have limited power to change the final result. On the other hand, the character continue to search for ways to influence their circumstances, reflecting the deeply human desire to resist predetermined outcome. This theme invites viewers to think about how much control people truly have over the direction of their lives. Another important theme revolves around the ethical question about survival. When individuals believe their lives are at risk, their moral priorities can shift dramatically. Situations that once seemed clear and straightforward may suddenly become complicated by fear and desperation. The story raises question about how fear a person should go in order to protect themselves. Is survival the highest priority, even if it means harming others or compromising one's value? Or should ethical boundaries remain film regardless of the situation? These questions forms an important moral tension within the narrative, forcing character to confront difficult choices that test their principle. Closely connected to these ethical dilemmas is the theme of human selfishness versus collective responsibility. When faced with danger, people may react in a very different way. Some individuals may raise in cooperation and mutual support, while others may become increasingly focused on their own survival. These contrasts create emotional conflict between characters as they struggle to decide whether they should trust one another to act independently. The story explores how fear can weaken social bond and lead individuals to question the reliability of the people around them. The film also explored the theme of morality awareness. In everyday life, most people avoid thinking about the inevitability of death. The routines and destruction of daily life allow individuals to focus on the present without constantly considering the fragility of existence. However, the characters in the story are forced to confront their reality directly. Their awareness that their time may be limited shape their emotions and decisions. This confrontation with morality encourages viewers to reflect on how people respond when the illusion of the safety disappears. Another theme involves the psychological effect of living under constant threat. Fear does not only influence action, it also changes how people perceive the world around them. Ordinary environment begin to feel dangerous and routine situation may appear unpredictable. This transformation in perception illustrates how anxiety can reshape a person's understanding of reality. The narrative demonstrates how prolonged stress can lead to paranoia, mistrust, and emotional exhaustion. The story also touches on the idea of cause and consequence, emphasizing how small action can lead to significant outcome. Life often appears stable and predictable, yet the film suggests that even minor details may trigger unexpected development. This theme reflects a broader philosophical perspective about the interconnected nature of the event. Every decision, moment, or change in circumstances may contribute to a larger chain of reaction. By highlighting this interconnectedness, the narrative encourages viewers to consider how delicate the balance of everyday life can be. In addition to the philosophical and psychological theme, the film also contains elements related to the cultural perception of destiny and luck. Many cultures around the world have long tradition of believing in fate, karma, and predetermined path. The story draws on these ideas by presenting the possibility that life may follow a hidden structure beyond human understanding. At the same time, modern cultures often emphasize personal achievement and individual control over the future. The tension between these two perspectives, destiny and self determination, create an interesting cultural layer within the narrative. Emotionally, the character experience arc that move through several stages of reaction. At first, there may be the confusion and disbelief as they attempt to understand what is happening. This uncertainty gradually evolves into fear and anxiety as the situation becomes more serious. As the pressure increases, the individual must decide how they will respond, whether they will confront the problem with the determination, seek support from others, or retreat into self-preservation. These emotional development provide insight into different way people cope with crisis and uncertainty. The theme of human resilience also play a role in the story despite the overwhelming nature of the circumstances they face. The character continues searching for answers and possibility. Their determination reflect a fundamental aspect of the human nature, the desire to survive and to find meaning even in the most challenging situation. Their persistence demonstrate how hope can exist alongside fear, motivating an individual to continue fighting against difficult odds. Ultimately, the themes explored in the film combine psychology, philosophical question about fate, ethical dilemmas and survival, and emotional reflection on morality and fear. By placing characters in a situation where controls seem uncertain and danger feel unavoidable, the story encourages viewers to think about how people respond when faced with the limit of their power. Through these layered themes, the narrative becomes not only a successful, suspenseful experience but also a meditation on the complexity of human behavior when life itself is unpredictable. The emotional connection that Final Destination 5 created with viewer come largely from the way it combined tension, vulnerability, and universal human fear. Even though the story is built around a supernatural concept, the emotional reaction it encourages are grounded in experience that many people can relate to. By placing characters in situations where their safety suddenly disappears, the film invites viewer to imagine how they themselves might feel in a similar situation. This imaginative involvement become the foundation of the movie's emotional impact. One of the strongest way the story connect with audience is through its mood of constant uncertainty. From the beginning, the narrative is establishing an atmosphere where dangers can appear without warning. This sense of unpredictability make viewers feel uneasy but also deeply engaged. Instead of presenting fear as a distant or abstract, the film placing it directly into everyday environment. Ordinary locations and familiar objects are shown in way that gradually build tension, encouraging viewers to see the world of the story as fragile and unstoppable. This mood of uncertainty affects the viewer's emotional experience about this film. The audience being to watch suspense with heightened awareness, carefully observing every detail in the environment. Small action and object may seem significant at first, but they slowly take on greater meaning as tension builds. This process turns the viewing experience into an active one. Instead of passively watching event unfold, viewers mentally participate by predicting possible outcome and participating what might happen next. This engagement strengthens the emotional bond between the audience and the story. Another key factor in the film's emotional connection is its exploration of human vulnerability. The character in the story start as ordinary individuals living normal lives. When their sense of safety is suddenly disrupted, they are faced to confront the reality that life can change unexpectedly. The idea resonates with viewers because it reflects a common fear shaped by many people. The possibility that something unpredictable could alter the course of life in an instant. By highlighting this vulnerability, the story encourages empathy. Viewers may not experience the exact circumstances portrayed in the narrative, but they can easily understand the emotional reaction of fear, conclusion, and desperation that the character experience. Watching these reactions allow the audience allow audience to imagine how they might respond if faced with familiar uncertainty. The film also connects emotionally through its exploration of molarity and the awareness of limited and most people go through their daily routine without constantly thinking about the inevitability of death. The character in the story, however, are forced to confront this reality in a very direct way. Their awareness and their lives may be threaten create a sense of urgency that shape their emotion and decision. For viewer, this theme can provoke deeper reflection. It raises question about how people value their time, their relationship, and their priorities when they are reminded of life's fragility, even though the life is primarily designed as a suspenseful entertainment. This underlying theme adds a layer of emotional depth that can resonate beyond the immediate thrill of the story. Another emotional elements come from the relationship between the character. When an individual faces a shared crisis, their interaction often become more intense and meaningful. Fear and certainty can strengthen bond between people, but they can also create tension and mistrust. The character must decide whether they can rely on one another or whether their circumstances will push them towards self preservation. This dynamic reflects real human behavior. In stressful situations, viewers may recognize the emotional complexity of these interactions because some similar pattern can occur in real life during moment of crisis. The struggle between cooperation and self interest add emotional weight to the story and keep the audience invested in the character's choices. The film pacing also contribute to the emotional connection. It creates periods of calm, allow viewers to observe the character thought and emotion, while sudden moment of chaos create intense reaction. This rhythm keep the audience emotionally involved, shifting between anticipation, relief, and shock. The contrast between these emotional states help maintain engagement throughout the narrative. Another important aspect of the viewer experience is the feeling of the sheer tension. A suspense built within each scene, the audience and the character often experience similar emotion at the same time. The character may sense that something is wrong, and viewers feel the same rising anxiety as they watch the situation unfold. This alignment of the emotions strengthen the connection between audience and the story. The themes explored in the film also contribute to its emotional impact. Ideas about fate, control, and unpredictability of life encourages viewers to reflect on broader questions about human existence. Even though the narrative is presenting through dramatic and suspenseful situation, the theme themselves touch on concerns that people encounter in their own question about whether events are random or part of a larger pattern can create a sense of curiosity and contemplation for viewers. In addition to fear and tension, the film also evoke emotion related to hope and determination. Despite the uncertainty surrounding them, the character continues searching for a way to understand this situation and protect themselves. The persistence reflect on important aspects of human nature, the desire to survive and overcome challenges. Determination can inspire viewers to admire the character resilience even as they face overwhelming circumstances. Ultimately, the emotional connection created by the story comes from its ability to blend suspenseful entertainment with themes that feel personal, meaningful. By placing ordinary individual in extraordinary situation, the film encourages audience to imagine how fragile safety can be and how powerful the instinct for survival. Because when life feels uncertain, through its tense exploration of molarity and the portrayal of the human reaction to the fear, the narrative creates an emotional experience that extends beyond sympathy. Really, it invites viewers not only to feel suspense and excitement but also to reflect on the unpredictable nature of life and the emotional strength required to face the unknown. In Final Destination 5, the characters are written to represent different psychological reactions to fear and uncertainty. While the film is primarily driven by suspense and concept rather than deep character drama, the main characters still play an important role in shaping the emotional tension of the story. Each character reflects a different personality type and survival instinct, allowing viewer to observe how individuals behave when they believe their lives may be controlled by forces beyond their understanding. Sam Lawton serves as the central protagonist and the emotional lens through which the audience experiences the story. Sam can be viewed as a classic reluctant hero archetype. At the beginning, he appeared to be an ordinary young professional dealing with everyday concern about work and relationship. Her personality shows signs of hesitation and uncertainty, particularly about his future and direction of his life. However, once he becomes aware that something larger may be happening around him, Sam gradually evolves into a more determined and thoughtful figure. He began to analyze pattern, question what he sees, and search for a way to protect both himself and people close to him. This progression makes him relatable to viewers because he reacts with the same confusion and fear that most people might feel in such a situation. Molly Harper, Sam's girlfriend, represents the emotional stability and empathy within the story. Her role reflects the supporting partner archetype, but she also carries an important emotional function in the narrative. Molly is characterized by loyalty, patience, and willingness to trust him even when the situation becomes difficult to understand. While many characters react with panic or display, Molly maintains a calm and grounded presence. Her personality highlights the theme of trust and relationship during time of crisis. Through their interaction with Sam, the audience sees how emotional support can help individuals remain focused and hopeful despite overwhelming circumstances. Peter Friedkin represents a very different psychological response to fear. His character can be understood as a survival driven archetype, someone whose personality becomes increasingly shaped by desperation and determination. Peter being the story as a confident and assertive individual, but as the tension increases, his outlook changes. Fear being to influence his choice and his focus shift toward personal survival above all. And the transformation include a moral dimension to the narrative. Peter action reflect the difficult ethical question that arise when people feel their lives are threatened. His character shows how quickly a person's priorities can change when survival becomes a dominant concern. Nathan Source provides another interesting perspective within the group. Nathan can be seen as the pragmatic thinker archetype. His personality is more cautious and reflective compared to the some of the other characters. Rather than reacting purely through emotion, Nathan attempts to understand the situation logically. He observes patterns and try to interrupt event in a rational way. This approach allows the audience to see the situation from a more analytical perspective. Nathan's character represents the human instinct to search for explanation even when the circumstances appear mysterious or unpredictable. Another notable figure is Dennis Lampman, who reflects the authoritative personality type often seen in workplace setting. Dennis is confident, strict, and focused on maintaining control over his environment. His leadership style is direct and sometimes confrontational. This personality trait create tension when unexpected circumstances challenge his authority. Characters like Dennis illustrate how individuals who are accustomed to control may struggle when faced with a situation that can't be managed moral modern method. Together, these characters create a spectrum of emotional and psychological responses. Some respond with curiosity and determination, others with fear and self-preservation, while some attempt to maintain logic and order. This diversity of personalities allow the film to explore how people with different react when confronted with uncertainty. From a reverse perspective, the characters in the films are not designed to be deeply complex psychological plot. Instead, they function as a representative figure with a suspense-driven narrative. Their primary purpose is to highlight different aspects of the human behavior when individuals are forced to confront the possibility that their lives may be gone by forces beyond their control. Ultimately, the character contribute to the film's tension by showing that fear does not affect everyone in the same way. Some people search for answers, some rely on emotional connection, others focus entirely on survival. By presenting these contrasting reactions, the story allows viewers to reflect on how they themselves might respond when faced with the same uncertainty and pressure. The acting performance in the film play a very important role in shaping the emotional tone of the film. While the movie is primarily known for its suspenseful concept and elaborate tension-filled moment, the actors still carry the responsibilities of making the character feel believable. In a story where fear, confusion, and desperation drive the narrative, the performers must convey those emotions convincingly so the audience can connect with the character's experience. At the center of the film is Nicolas D'Agosto, who play the lead role of the Sam Lawton. His performance is grounding and natural, which help the audience concept the extraordinary broken circumstances of the story. Sam being as an ordinary person dealing with everyday life concern, and D'Agostino portray this normality effectively. His acting style focusing on subtitle emotional reaction rather than exaggerated drama. When the character being to sense that something is wrong, the fear and confusion appear gradually in his expression and body language. This slow shift allows viewer to experience the unfolding tension alongside him. As the story progresses, the Agostino also show the character growth into someone more determined and focused. His performance reflects a balance between vulnerability and courage, making Sam feel relatable rather than overly heroic. Emma Bell, who play Molly Harper, being a calm and emotionally sportive presence to the story. Molly's character functions as an emotional anchor, and Bella portrays this role with sincerity and warmth. His performance emphasizes empathy and loyalty, particularly in the way she interacts with Sam rather than reacting with panic or disbelief. Molly often responds with quiet concern and patient belly acting style maintain emotional stability within the narrative. In moment when the story becomes intense or chaotic, her presence provides a sense of reassurance for both the character and the audience. This grounded performance helps reinforce the emotional connection between the lead actors. One of the most striking sporting performances come from the Miles Fisher, who plays Peter Frieding. Fisher portray add a significant layer of emotional intensity to the films. Peter being as a confident and someone control character, but as the situation grew more dangerous, his personality started to change. Fisher captured this transformation with noticeable shift in tone and behavior. His performance became increasingly intense as the story progresses, reflecting how fear and desperation can alter a person's mindset. This gradual emotional shift attention to the group dynamic and create moment where viewers feel uncertain about how the character might act next. Arlen Escarpeta, who play Nathan Sears, deliver a performance that feels thoughtful and restrained. Nathan character often approaches situation with a more analytical mindset, and Escarpeta portray this quality effectively instead of reacting purely through emotion. His characters try to process events logically. Escarpeta calm delivery and measured reaction have balance and more dramatic performances around him. His presence give the story a sense of realism because his character behave in a way that reflects someone trying to make sense of confusing and unpredictable circumstances. Another memorable presence in the film is Tony Todd, who return in his mysterious role connected to the larger story. Even though his screen time is limited, Toda's performance carries a unique weight. His deep voice, composed demeanor, and deliberate delivery create an atmosphere of quiet authority. When he appears, the tone of the film shifts slightly, becomes more reflecting and ominous. Todd performance become add a sense of mythology and psychological depth to the narrative, reminding viewer with the story involved forces beyond ordinary understanding. The chemistry between the actor is also an important factor in the film's effectiveness. The relationship between Nicolas D'Agosta and Amber Bell feels believable because their interaction are natural and emotionally sincere. Their conservation and shared moments convey a sense of trust and familiarity, which strength make the emotional stake of the story. When danger threatens their relationship, the audience can feel the tension because the connection between the character has been clearly established. Within the larger group of Servoria, the chemistry varies in ways that reflect the evolving dynamic of the story. Earlier interaction often carry a sense of commentarian and shared relief as the character attempt to support one another after experiences a traumatic event. However, as fear grows and uncertainty spread, the emotional tone between them being to shift. The actor portrayed this change effectively through subtitle variation in tone, eye contact, and body language. Conservation that once seemed casual become more restrained, and the atmosphere of trust gradually become fragile. From an emotional perspective, the performance work together to create a believable environment where the audience can feel the trust and anxiety affecting the character. Even though the film concept involve extraordinary circumstances, the actors' grounded performance help maintain a sense of realism. Their reaction to fear, confusion, and desperation reflect recognizable human emotions, making it easier for viewer to imagine themselves in similar situation. Overall, the acting in the film succeed because the performer understand the tone of the film rather than overshadowing the suspense with overly dramatic portray. They focus on authentic emotional reaction. The lead actor portray provide a strong emotional center, while the supporting cast add complexity and tension to the group dynamic. Together, these performances help transform the film from a simple thriller into an experience where the audience can feel both the fear and the emotional weight of the story. The question of realism and the character depth in the film is an interesting topic because the film exist within a supernatural premise while still trying to portray believable human reaction. Even though the central concept involves forces that operate beyond normal explanation, the characters themselves are written and performed in ways that aim to feel recognizable and emotionally authentic. The balance between extraordinary situation and ordinary human responses become an important part of the movie's storytelling approach. From a character development perspective, the film does not focus heavily on detailed backstories or long personal history. Instead, the narrative emphasizes how characters change and respond to the extreme pressure surrounding them. Their development comes less from traditional character arc and more from the observing how their attitude, fear, and priorities evolve over time. This method allows the story to remain fast paced while still giving viewer glimpse into the personalities and motivation of the individual involved. Sam Lawton, the central character, represent the clear example of this type of development at the beginning of the story. He appears as an average young professional facing ordinary life, and suddenly his personality shows hesitation and a sense of confusion about his future as events unfold. However, he gradually becomes more attentive, cautious, and determined. This shift does not happen suddenly but develops through his reaction to increasingly stressful circumstances. The change in his mindset reflects a realistic psychological response. When people are confronting with danger and uncertainty, they often begin to analyze situation more carefully and search for way to regain control. Another important aspect of realism in the films comes from the way characters react emotionally to the possibility of danger instead of immediately understanding or expecting the situation. Many of them initially respond with disbelief or skepticism. This reaction mirrors how people often believe in real life when faced with something that contradict their expectation. Individuals that tend to look for logical explanation first, attempting to rationalize unusual event before considering more extraordinary possibility. By portraying this hesitation, the film add a layer of believability to the character's behavior. Believability is also strengthened through the relationship between the character they are presenting as a co-worker, friend, or acquaintances who share a common environment before the central conflict being. Because of this shared background, their interaction feel natural and familiar. Conservation often carry the tone of the people who know one another through everyday experience rather than through dramatic storytelling device. This subtitle familiarity help ground the narrative, making the character feel like a real individual rather than purely fictional construct. The emotional range shown by the character also contribute to the film's sense of realism. Fear, confusion, frustration, and determination appear at different points throughout the story. Rather than maintaining a simple emotional tone, the character move through a variety of reaction as the situation develops. Early moment may show shock or disbelief, while later scene reveal anxiety and tension as the character become more aware of their circumstances. This progression reflects how people typically process stressful situation in stages. Another element that adds depth to the character is the variety of responsibility within the group. Each individual approaches the situation with a slightly different mindset. Some respond with caution and careful thinking, while others react more impulsively or emotionally. These differences create natural disagreement and conflict between the character. Such disagreements are believable because real people rarely interrupt different situations in the same way. Personal values, past experience, and emotional resilience all influence how individuals react under pressure. The film also touches on the psychological impact of living under constant uncertainty. When the character begin to feel that their safety is no longer guaranteed, their perception of the world changes. The everyday environment start to feel unpredictable. Ordinary object may be threatening. The shift in the perception reflect a real psychological phenomena. When poor experience prolonged anxiety, they often become more alert to potential danger in their surrounding. By portraying this highlighting awareness, the film capturing an aspect of the human behavior that feel authentic despite these strengths. The depth of the character remains somewhat limited compared to the more character driven dramas. The story primarily focuses suspense and pacing, which mean that there is less time for detailed exploration of personal histories or complex emotional background. Instead, the character function mainly as representative of different responses to fear and certainty. While this approach keeps the narrative moving quickly, it also means that some viewers may wish a deeper insight into the character lives outside the central conflict. However, this limitation is also partially intentional. The film structure relies on maintaining the tension and momentum. The extended character exploration could slow the pace of the story by focusing on immediate emotional reaction rather than long-term development. The narrative keep the audience engaged with the unfolding suspense. Ultimately, the realism in the films comes less from the supernatural premise and more from the believable human responses to that premise. The character may exist in a world where unexplained forces influence events, but their fear, doubt, and attempt to cope with uncertainty reflect recognizable aspect of human psychology through subtitle character development, natural interaction, and a range of emotional reaction. The film creates individuals who feel relatable even within a story built around extraordinary circumstances. The production budget of the film reflects the typical financial structure of a mid-range Hollywood horror thriller. The film was produced with an estimated budget of around $40 million, placing it in a moderate cost range compared with large blockbuster production. This level of investment allowed the filmmaker to create visually impressive sequence and complex technical scenes while still keeping the project financially manageable. Horror film often operate successfully with this type of budget range because they rely more on suspense, atmosphere, and creative stages rather than constant large scale spectacle. One of the most important aspects of the budget was the allocation of the resource toward visual effect and technical production. The story includes several elaborate sequences that require careful planning, digital effect, and precise coordination. Significant portion of the budget was therefore likely toward computer generated imagery, stunt coordination, and post production. But these elements are essential for creating convincing large scale movement as well as the detailed cause and effect sequence that the film is known for. Visual effect artists, stunt team, and post production specialists all contribute to shaping the financial appearance of these scenes. Another area of spending involves set design and location management. Although the film takes place in everyday environment such as workplace, public areas, and industrial setting, these locations still require careful preparations. Production design must modify or construct certain elements to satisfy perform stunt and create realistic environment for the film. Lighting setups, camera equipment, and sound recording technology also contribute to the overall production cost. While these details may not always be visible to the audience, they play a critical role in maintaining the film's visual clarity and professional presentation. The film casting strategy also reflected a budget conscious approach. Instead of relying on extremely high profile actor with large salaries, the production focused on capable performer who could deliver convincing performance without significantly releasing the financial burden. This strategy is common in genre films, while the story concept and suspense are the main attraction. By controlling casting cost, the production team could allocate more resources to the technical element such as the effects and the action choreography. Another technical factor influenced the budget was the use of the three-dimensional presentation technology, which was a popular trend in the early 2010. Producing a film with 3D compatibility required specialized cameras, additional visual adjustment, and more complex post-production processes. These requirements increase production costs compared to the traditional filming method. However, studios often consider the investment worthwhile because 3D release can attract audience looking for a more impressive theater experience. When examining the budget analytically, it is useful to compare it with other films with the same genre and time period. Many mainstream horror films operate within a budget range between $20 million and $50 million. This range allows the filmmaker to produce polished visual while minimize financial risk compared with major Action or science fiction blockbuster may exceed $150 million. The cost of producing a horror thriller like this remain relatively moderate. Similar films released during the same era often follow a comparable financial strategy. Many suspense driven horror projects rely on creative storytelling and well designed sequence rather than extremely expensive global setting or large ensemble cast. This approach allows the studio to achieve strong audience engagement without the financial pressure associated with massive production budget. Another important aspect of the budget management involves post production work, which include editing, sound design, and musical scoring. These elements contribute significantly to the tone and pacing to the final film. Suspenseful storytelling often rely on precise editing and carefully crafted sound effect to build tension. Allocated resource to these areas ensure that scenes maintain the rhythm and emotional intensity required for a successful thriller. Marketing and distribution costs are usually separate from the production budget, but they still play a role in determining the overall financial strategy. Studios typically plan promotional campaigns that align with the scale of the film's budget. In the case of a mid range horror film, marketing efforts often focus on trailer, poster, and digital advertising designed to attract genre fan and younger audience. Overall, the production budget of the film demonstrates a balanced approach to filmmaking by maintaining cost within a moderate range. The producers was able to invest in technical quality while keeping financial risk relatively controlled. Resources were strategically allocated toward visual effects, stunt coordination, and post-production processes that support the film's suspenseful style when compared with similar genre of film. The budget falls comfortably within the standard range for studio horror thriller, showing how careful managed spending can support both creative goals and commercial viability. The domestic box office performance of the film provide an interesting example of how established horror franchises tend to perform within the North America market. Domestically, meaning primarily the United States and the Canada, the film earned roughly $42 million during its theatrical run. When analyzed within the broader context of the horror genre and the franchise filmmaking, this figure reflects a stable but moderate performance rather than an overwhelmingly commercial breakthrough. One of the key factors influencing the domestic box office was the film look connection to the long running financial destination. By the time the fifth installment was released, the franchise already had a recognizable brand identity among horror fans. This familiarity played an important role in attracting the audience during the opening weekend. Established franchise often benefit from loyal viewers who are curious to see how the story evolves in each new chapter. As many of the film domestic earning came from fans who were already familiar with the concept and the style of the series. In terms of audience trend, the domestic viewership for the films largely reflected the typical demographic pattern of the modern horror movies. The majority of the ticket buyers were younger audience, particularly those in the late teenage to earlier 30 age group. This demographic group has historically shown strong interest in suspense driven environment that deliver fast paced thrill and visually dramatic moment. The film marketing strategy was clearly designed to appeal to the audience segment, highlighting the tension, spectacle, and creative audience accident sequence that define the franchise. Another factor influencing domestic performance was the film release timing. Horror films often perform well during late summer or early autumn because the audience are more receptive to the suspenseful entertainment during those periods. Releasing the movie during a time when there were relatively few direct competitors in the same genre, allowing it to capture the attention of horror fans looking for a new theatrical experience. When examining the film domestic box office in comparison with earlier entries in the series, depth, the results show a pattern of consistent but slightly declined return. The original Final Destination film generated strong interest when it was the first release, largely because the concept felt fresh and unexpected. Later installments continued to attract audience but sometimes faced the challenge of maintaining excitement around a familiar formula. By the time the fifth film arrived, many viewers were already familiar with the structure of the story, which may have limited the level of surprise compared to the earlier entries. However, the domestic performance of the film still remain competitive within the horror genre. Many horror films operate successfully within even with modest box office total because their production budget are usually lower than those of large action or science fiction film with the production budget estimated at around $40 million. The domestic revenue alone nearly matched the initial investment. This outcome is generally considered a positive sign for studios, especially when additional revenue from international markets and home media is taken into account. Another interesting aspect of the domestic box office performance is the influence of 3D theatrical presentation, which were practically popular around the early 2010. Many theaters filmed the film in 3D format, allowing studios to charge slightly higher ticket prices. This pricing strategy help increase revenue even if the total number of the viewers remain moderate. For audience, the 3D format also promise a more impressive experience, especially during suspenseful sequence designed to emphasize visual depth and emotion. In comparison with the other horror film released during the same period, Final Destination 5 performed relatively well within its category. The horror genre typically relies on strong opening weekend, followed by a gradual decline as audience quickly move to the next major release. This pattern occurs because many horror fans prefer to watch new titles immediately rather than waiting several weeks. The film followed this general trend, earning a significant portion of its domestic total early in its theatrical run. From an analytical standpoint, the domestic box office performance demonstrates how franchise recognition, targeting, marketing, and the genre appeal can support steady financial. Even without breaking major box office record, the film successfully reached its core audience and maintained the commercial viability of the franchise. Overall, the domestic earning of the film illustrate the reliable performance made often seen in horror filmmaking. By appealing to franchise when attracting younger viewers and leveraging theatrical presentation format, the film was able to achieve respectable revenue within the North America market while continuing the legacy of its long running series. The international box office performance of the film demonstrates how horror franchise can often perform even more strongly outside the domestic market. While the film earned a moderate amount in North America, its global reach significantly increased its total revenue. Internationally, the film generated approximately $115 million, bringing its worldwide total to well over $150 million. This difference between domestic and international performance reflects a more common pattern in the modern film distribution, where global market play a major role in determining a movie financial success. One of the most noticeable aspects of the film international performance was its broad appeal across multiple geographic reaction markets in Europe, Asia, and Latin America contributed significantly to the overall earning. European countries have historically been respected to the suspense-driven horror film, particularly those that combine dramatic tension with visually creative sequence. Audience in countries such as the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and the Spain often respond well to recognizable franchise, and the established reputation of the series help attract viewers who are already familiar with their style. In Asian market, the film also performs steadily. Countries like Japan, South Korea have strong tradition of horror cinema, and audience in these regions tend to appreciate atmospheric suspense and inventive visual storytelling. Even though the narrative structure of the Western horror sometimes differs from local style, recognizable global franchise can still attract considerable interest. The brand recognition associated with the Final Destination series helped the film gain attention among younger moviegoers who enjoy intense, visually driven theatrical experience. Latin America market representing another important source of international revenue in many countries across Central and South America. Horror film frequently achieves strong ticket sale because they offer high energy entertainment that appeal to the younger audience. The combination of suspense, dramatic visuals, and the accessible storytelling made the film easy to market within these regions. Promotional campaign often emphasize the thrilling aspect of the movie rather than complex storytelling, allow it to connect with viewers looking for exciting theatrical entertainment. Market strategy play a crucial role in shaping the film international reception. Studios often trailer promotional campaigns to match regional audience preferences. For example, trailer release in international market frequently highlighted the film's intense visual sequence and dramatic atmosphere. Posters and advertisements were designed to emphasize tension and spectacle, which are the elements that translate easily across language barriers. By focusing on universal theme of suspense and anticipation, the marketing campaign made the film appealing to audience regardless of cultural differences. Another factor that supported international running was the global popularity of the franchise branding. The larger final destination had already developed a recognizable identity over several years. When a film series reached multiple installment, international audience often become familiar with its central concept and style. This familiarity introduced the need for extensive explanation in marketing material, allowing promotional campaign to focus on more on excitement and visual appeal rather than narrative detail. The availability of the 3D theatrical screening also contributed to the film international box office result during the early 2000s. Many cinemas around the world were expanding their 3D capabilities, and the audience were curious about impressive viewing experience. Because 3D screening typically involve slightly higher ticket prices, they can increase revenue even if the number of viewers remain consistent. For visually driven horror film, the 3D format offer an additional promotional advantage, encouraging audience to see the movie in theaters rather than waiting for movie viewing option. Comparing the film's international performance with similar horror titles reveal a familiar pattern. Many mid-budget horror films rely heavily on screen overseas market to achieve strong overall profitability. While the domestic audience may show moderate interest, international viewers often provide a larger share of the total revenue. This pattern has become increasingly common as global distribution network expand and marketing campaign reach broader audience. Another important consideration is the role of release scheduling across different regions. Studios sometimes stranger international release date to maintain global interest and adapt to the local market condition. By spacing out release in nervous countries, distributors can sustain promotional momentum and allow the positive audience reaction in one region to influence interest in other. Word of mouth and online discussions often travel quickly across international markets, contributed to the broader awareness of the film. Market reception internationally was generally considered with expectation for the franchise horror entry. Audience familiar with the series were attracted by the recognizable style and suspense driven entertainment, while new viewers were drawn by the film marketing emphasis on dramatic visual experience. Even without relying heavily on complex narrative promotion, the film managed to maintain steady attendance across multiple regions. Overall, the international box office performance of the film highlight the importance of the global audience in the modern film industry. With strong earning from the Europe, Asia, and Latin America, the movie demonstrated how recognizable franchise and visually engaging marketing campaigns can successfully reach viewers across cultural and geographic boundary. The combination of the franchise recognition, international distribution strategy, and immersive theatrical formats allow the film to achieve a significantly higher revenue level broad than its domestic market. The worldwide financial performance of the Final Destination 5 can be understood more clearly by examining its total gross revenue and comparing it with the estimated cost required for the film to break even in the global marketplace. The movie financial success is rarely determined by domestic earning. Instead, studios evaluate worldwide revenue, which combine domestic ticket sale with international box office result and additional income stream that follow the theatrical release. In terms of worldwide box office total, the film earned approximately $157 million globally. This total comes from combining its North America earning with its significantly larger international revenue. The global audience play an essential role in pushing the film well beyond its production cost, while the North America market contributed a modern portion of the revenue. International audience accounted for the majority of the ticket sale, demonstrated how global distribution has become a central component of the modern film economics. To understand why the film was profitable, it is necessary to consider the break-even point. The production budget of the film to be around $40 million, but that the number does not represent the total financial investment made by the studios. Additional expenses must be considered, including marketing, campaign, promotional material, distribution, logistic, and theater exhibition agreements. Now we talk about the film's performance. The performance quite well for a mid-budget horror project. The production value, the visual effect are polished and integrated smoothly into the scene, creating moments that feel both dramatic and technically impressive. The cinematography and editing contribute strongly to the atmosphere, using pacing and visual framing to maintain a sense of constant unease. That scene to present the film in 3D also add a layer of visual depth, enhancing the theatrical experience, even if it occasionally feel like a stylistic experiment rather than the narrative necessity. The film is clearly aimed at horror and thriller enthusiasts, viewers who enjoy films that explore theme of fate, unpredictability, and the fragile nature of the control will find the movie thought-provoking in its own suspenseful way. The movie resonance comes less from the deep character exploration and more from the sheer feeling of the tension that develops between the audience and the unfolding event. This mistake the viewing experience highly impressive for fan of atmospheric horror. In terms of age group, the movie is primarily designed for older teenager and young viewers, generally those aged 16 or 18 and above, depending on regional rating standard. Its intense atmosphere, suspenseful moment, and mature theme make it less appropriate for younger audience who may find the tone overwhelming or unsettling. However, the film may not appeal to everyone. Viewers who prefer emotional driven story with complex character development may find the movie somewhat limited in that area. Similarly, audience who dislike suspenseful tension or graphic horror element may feel uncomfortable within the film style. Overall, the film is recommended for thriller and horror fans seeking an intense cinematic experience filled with suspense, visual creativity, and a stronger atmosphere of unpredictability.